Should have bought a Honda. Like, we are on a whole different level right now.
We have a full house right now. This is good. Peter Schrager, I'm in for Greeny this morning. What an honor and what a squad we have today. From left to right, we got Mike Tannenbaum, we've got Ryan Clark, we've got Dan Orlovsky, we've got Dan Graziano, and we've got football. Let's get right to it. It's a game we call Can't Pass, and I'm going to do it with my football crew. Let's start off in Kansas City. Dan Orlovsky, will Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs be even better this season?
I think so, yes, because the offensive line improvement. Josh Simmons is going to play left tackle for them. We have to remember that Hollywood Brown was hurt last year. The Rashee Rice addition, he was balling before the injury last year. I actually like Christian Fulton as the cornerback number 2 addition to their defense that searched for another corner last season as that year went on. They were awesome last year. I do think they're going to be even more complete this.
RC, will Malik Neighbors thrive with Russ as his quarterback?
Malik Neighbors will thrive with anyone. Listen, I even tweeted the other day, I don't know who runs the Giants' social media, but if I'm one of the cornerbacks, if I'm a Debo, if I'm Deonte Banks, I'm telling them stop showing highlights of Malik Neighbors in the end zone doing touchdown dances. 7th in yards last year, 5th in catches, and he missed 2 games playing with Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, and also Daniel Jones. He's going to take that next step and be right below the tier of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase this year.
LSU boys, Dan Graziano, will J.J. McCarthy have Minnesota as a Super Bowl contender?
Super Bowl contender, I think, is a lot to ask for J.J. McCarthy's first season as a starter. I believe in Kevin O'Connell and his ability to get the most out of J.J. McCarthy, but after having to miss his rookie season, I think we're still looking at a little bit of a learning curve here. If they can be a Super Bowl contender, then that will be another Coach of the Year honor for Kevin O'Connell.
Let's go. Mike Tannenbaum, will Dak Prescott have his best year yet with CeeDee Lamb plus George Pickens?
Yes, guys, there's a star in Dallas going into the last year of his deal. His name's George Pickens, and he's going to have a great year. He came over from Pittsburgh in the offseason.
Wow.
Going to be 3 first-round picks on the offensive line, something Brian Schottenheimer absolutely loves. Dak will be well protected. We know how good CeeDee Lamb is, and we know how motivated George Pickens is.
It's a Monday. It's football. We start with Cowboys, as we do.
Really?
Just when news of them was simmering on the back burner, Micah Parsons decided to spice things up Friday afternoon when he demanded a trade on social media, stemming from his ongoing contract negotiations with the team. Here's what he said. I stayed quiet, but again, after repeated shots at myself and all the narratives, I have made a tough decision. I no longer want to play for the Dallas Cowboys. My trade request has been submitted to Stephen Jones personally. That's what Micah had to say. Jerry Jones responded later in the weekend, and here is what Jarrett had to say after practice.
I think the world of Micah, and that's just a part of negotiation. What y'all don't know is what I offered him, and it's a hell of a lot more than you think I did. That's what you don't know. But my point is, I reached. Make no mistake about it, I reached. As always, in any relationships, there are different moods at different times of your relationship. That's what it is. Don't lose any sleep over it.
So just to be
That's
clear,
the one thing I would say to our fans. Don't lose any sleep over it.
Mike T, your response to that sound.
Peter, that irks me. As someone that's negotiated for a couple decades in the NFL, you never, ever, ever, ever negotiate in public. All you're going to do is alienate the player and the agent. You just take the high road. You thank him for the services. We are working hard to get a deal done. And I will tell you this. I had the privilege of sitting between a head coach and an owner for a lot of my career. But it was the locker room guys that was the check and balances. RC, Dan, you know that. And I don't know who it is. Maybe it's Tyler Smith. But there's some good young player on the Cowboys.
That locker room's checked out.
Yeah, who's thinking like, look what happened with Dak. Look what happened with CD. This is what I have to do. Like, you look at Philadelphia, you look at Washington. They're trying to compete with the 31 other teams. Right now, it just feels like Dallas is competing with themselves.
August 4th, we're not talking football. We're talking contract negotiations and another contract negotiation for the Cowboys. How would you characterize what's going on in Dallas?
I think it's the biggest problem Jerry Jones has had since the 90s. When was the last time a player said, I don't want to play for the Cowboys? Every player says, I want to play for the Cowboys. Now one of their most outspoken players, one of their best players, has publicly said, I don't want to play here anymore. And it's because of the way that I've been talked about or the way that my contract has been talked about. Nobody says, I don't want to be a Cowboy. Everyone craves to go play for the Cowboys because they know what it does for their pockets, for their post-career playing life, for the way that they're treated. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's eventually or actually going to happen. But the fact that it's come out and said publicly, this is the biggest problem Jerry Jones has had in like 30 years.
Dan Graziano, why is this the most Cowboys story ever?
Met a player that likes, to be out front and speak his mind publicly and enjoys attention as much as he does. This is Jerry Jones boss level in terms of contract negotiations, right? Because here's a player that's not afraid to go back at him in public, to tweet out a trade demand, right? Now, when you get to the boss level, the thing is the weapons that you used to get there don't work anymore, right? So now here's Jerry. What are you going to do? We're in a situation where clearly Jerry Jones got upset by what happened in the spring. He has taken this situation personally. Yep. Micah Parsons, to his credit, is there. And we say these guys need to be at training camp to avoid being fined. Micah Parsons on his rookie contract. So he would be fined $50,000 a day if he missed. But because he's on his rookie contract, the team is allowed to forgive those fines when the thing is resolved. So the fact that he's there says something. It backs up his words about wanting to be there. And I think we're at a point where Jerry Jones needs to find a different way to attack this situation than he has with some of the ones in the past.
Well, I think that's it. I think what Dan says is important because Jerry Jones has taken this personally. He's treated their conversation in the spring as if it was a conversation amongst friends, right? There is no friendship in ownership and labor. That's not the way it worked. The imbalance of power doesn't allow that. So when Jerry Jones says, okay, we're going to pay you this much per year, it's going to be this many years. And when Micah Parsons says, yes, that sounds good, Jerry, now call David Mulugeta and let's get the fine print worked out. You would expect that David Mulugeta has gotten black and white or gotten an email or gotten a paper that says, here's the outline of what we want to do within a contract. That's never happened. That next step that says, okay, I have a representation, the same way Jerry would have representation if he was going into litigation. I have representation that you're supposed to work this out with. And what's happened publicly is Jerry Jones, as we all do when we get older, we lose the social filter that tells us this is something we shouldn't talk about publicly. Yeah. And so now you've alienated your best player who, even though loves the spotlight, loves attention, went in early and wanted to renegotiate last year and was willing to have the conversation this year. And if all of those things happen and go the right way that business should be handled, Micah Parsons never has to ask for a trade. And I think him being in camp with what Dan said, his fines being forgivable. This is not Terry McLaurin. This is not Trey Hendrickson, who had to go back to camp because at some point during negotiations, they were going to have to say, the $500,000 I've accrued in fines, can you somehow help me with that within my contract? Micah doesn't have none of those things. Micah has approached this as more of an adult than Jerry Jones, and I believe that's a big problem.
Guys, we're burying the lead. Like, some deals are hard to figure out. I think Terry McLaurin, we could sit here and the five of us could have a reasonable disagreement. This is easy. You go back a year ago, if they had done it, Nick Bosa's at $34 million. All the deals that have gotten done this offseason are very predictable. From Max Crosby, Donnell Hunter, it's at $41 million. RC, my favorite line, get in a room. Get in a room, close the door. Look at that graph.
But here's the thing, Mike T. You always speak about getting in the room. Clearly, they got in the room.
They were in a room.
And they closed the door, and it was only those two. Do you close the door and allow the agent to be a part too?
Of course. And you look at this graphic right here and say, okay, $42 million a year, guaranteed the first 3 years, we're done. It's not that hard. There are hard deals to do in the NFL.
Mike, let me ask you, you negotiated a lot of these deals. When you see Micah reference Stephen Jones and not Jerry Jones and says, I'm submitting my trade request to him, not to him, what is your response to that?
Yeah, that's a little passive-aggressive as well, but I think Graz will lose that. My whole thing is, and I've done this a long time, get in a room, get the principals in the room. We are in the business of winning professional football games in as reasonable way as possible. Here is the market. You're a great young pass rusher. You're going nowhere. Here's where it is. Let's figure out cash flow, cap numbers, and let's get this thing done. And we're not leaving until it's done.
What happens where it gets to that point? Like, what has to get done or said where it gets to the point where the player who's been very public about loving being a Cowboy gets to a point, whether it's strategy or not, whether there's an end game to the process or not, that publicly states, I don't want to play for this place anymore. Because once you do that, it's not something that you just easily take back to the fans either. The fans have all heard Micah Parsons say, I don't want to play for the Cowboys anymore. How does it get to that point? It's got to be more than just a number.
One of the reasons that this edition of the Jerry Jones Cowboys has kind of, operated as a respectable and responsible organization is that he has deferred a lot in recent years to Stephen Jones, to Will McClay, to these guys in the front office that have kind of sanded the edges down in terms of Jerry's impulses. Yeah. And I think something like that has to happen here. Jerry has to say, all right, you know what, guys, I'm too fired up about this. You guys take care.
That's not going to happen.
Well, if it doesn't, then I think the hard feelings are going to continue and possibly have a damaging long-term effect on the relationship.
Let's talk about the locker room right now. Yeah. To Dan's point, we've seen it go down with Dak to the very last minute. We've seen it go down with CD. This one feels a little bit different. What's the effect on the younger players?
So I'm going to say this. When you look at different defensive players changing their profile pictures to pictures with themselves and Micah, or pictures of just Micah alone, that's taking a stance. That's picking a side. That's saying, in this disagreement, in these negotiations, we're standing with 11. When CeeDee Lamb, who already has his money, who understands that he is now a face and a voice of a franchise, says, hey, man, like, why are we going through this?
Right.
Like, give the man what you owe him.
And CeeDee Lamb, who never says anything, like he's the quietest star athlete.
Yeah, he doesn't speak. Yeah. And so the locker room is telling you what they think. The locker room is tired of this. And the locker room, because we all have self-awareness and common sense, right? Maybe you could have convinced me with Dak. It took a little while because you didn't want to make him the highest paid player ever. It's a quarterback. There's so much going on. CeeDee Lamb, on his own admission, waited because he wanted to have a comparable with Justin Jefferson. This one is easy. This one was a layup. This was actually the time the Dallas Cowboys had an easy path to be like, look how competent we are. Look how we treat the people who deserve to be paid. Yep. And they mucked this one up.
Player, and now you're saving $7 million a year if they could have gotten the deal done, which would have allowed you to keep whoever, Jordan Lewis, DeMarcus Lawrence.
There's serious versus unserious. Dak's cap hit is $50 million this year. And then Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, $49 million.
They all got done early, though, Dan.
But that's the premise of this conversation. Is like one place, Jordan Mailata last week is sitting there going, we're not the defending Super Bowl champions. This is a new season.
They're talking football.
And the Cowboys players are trying to have to figure out why their best player hasn't been paid money yet, and now they're going, well, how is he going to play this? There's a serious group and there's an unserious group. The serious one is the defending Super Bowl champion.
One team is preparing for a Super Bowl defense. The other one is preparing to change their Twitter profile pictures. It's a good summation, right?